Welcome back to another everyday value mechanic video. In today's video we have 2014 Ford Fiesta with 1.2 liter petrol engine and manual gearbox. Engine code for this particular car is SNJB. The issue customers having that there is knocking like sound coming from the gearbox. Once the clutch pedal is pressed down, the sound goes away. This indicates that the issue is inside the gearbox itself. Well, I don't know how to repair gearboxes, so that leaves us with one option: to replace it with another used gearbox. And it's good time also to replace clutch while we are there. Okay, then without any further ado, let's dive in. I start by removing the airbox, and for that we need to remove this intake pipe, and to do that I loosen up these two 7mm Jubilee clips and just slide both sides of the throttle body and the airbox itself. Then disconnect the breather pipe, then the whole airbox unit can be lifted out. It sits on these two pins here inside the grommets. Next I disconnect the negative terminal from the battery using the 10mm socket. Power up the terminal so it doesn't spark. And then I also, not necessarily you need to do, but what I like to do is loosen up this 8mm earth connection so I can fold this earth strap or negative strap on the side out of the way. Next, we use this 10mm socket to remove this battery bracket. And now we can disconnect the positive terminal. Just loosen up and slide it out. At this stage the battery can come out.
Yeah.
Now there's a 3 10mm bolts for the battery tray. I also disconnect this vacuum line, as it's gonna be a little bit in our way, and I disconnect this plastic bracket so I can lift this battery tray upwards to get access to two Torx T30 bolts underneath for the ECU.
This is
ECU, just the bottom part just tilted out of the way, and then you can slide it out. It has a hook here that hooks on this battery tray. Then the ECU itself, we can leave it inside. Next we disconnect this wiring loom from one of these battery tray brackets. There's two of them. Now we can remove these 5 10mm nuts for this battery tray bracket. And this could probably also is more like a airbox bracket rather than the battery tray bracket. These two remove, and this for the airbox bracket can come out. Now the other side of the battery tray bracket. Now there's a 10mm, 8mm for this wiring loom bracket. 15mm for the clutch and negative terminal, all earthed strap cable. Once that bolt is removed, we can pull this bracket out of the way. Also, there's a breather that goes into the gearbox. I use the pliers and a pick to loosen up to disconnect it, like so. I'm also gonna fold it away so it was out of the way. On this particular car there's quite a lot of wiring looms and earth straps and all kind of stuff. So the less there is, the easier it is to pull the gearbox out and then install it afterward. There's two 13mm bolts for the bell housing that is also holds this wiring loom bracket to the gearbox. So here from different angle, see. At the moment, this bolt is actually for the starter motor. There's also a bracket. And then there's one at the bottom. All bolts around the bell housing is 13mm. They're quite long as they go through a lot of components. So you pull this wiring, like slide it outwards, and that's gonna give you access for another bell housing bolt and for this bracket for the wiring loom. Show you shortly. That bolted and screw. Just pull it out. I'll just wiggle it and the bracket can come out. So here it slides on these two pins, the whole wiring loom. You can just have to unslide it. I use a cable tie to tie this wiring loom higher up, as it sits right on front of the bell housing. Next, I move to the bottom part, remove the both wheels. The bolt driveshaft has to come out. Now we remove the UV joint to driveshaft bolt that is 32mm. A lot of times, if they've never been removed, these gonna be seized into the hub. So you use the air hammer or a chisel, just put them in. If you don't have this tool, you can also use something that you can center punch, like a chisel, round it up, and the hammer. I spray some WD-40 or maintenance fluid, just so it doesn't get seized again later. And same procedure for the other side. Again, some WD-40 on all the bolts, the ball joint knuckle. 15 on the one side for this ball joint bolt, and 13 on the other side. Sorry for my torch, battery is running low. Next, we put this crowbar. Work the ball joint out. There's many ways how you can do this. If you have special tools, you can use special tools. If you want to put chisel in the middle, you can do that as well. With the cover, so we don't damage the ball joint dust cover. The one side drive shaft is out, and before, when you pull the whole hub, just be careful of these brake hoses. They can get damaged if you put too much tension on them. Same procedure on the other side. Now it's a good time to drain the oil. 22mm. Get yourself some tray or something to catch the oil. And once the oil, most of it is out, just tighten back in, and it's 25 Newton meters if anybody needs to. Sorry, 35 torque spec for this bolt. For this, yeah. Now we can pull the drive shaft. Here, the piece of the gearbox got cracked as I misaligned the my pray bar. Here we can see piece of gearbox for memory, but I don't need to worry on this one, as this gearbox anyway is going to bin. So that's one drive shaft is out. And now there's two 13mm nuts for the right side washer bracket. Typically these slides quite easy out. I don't know what's the difference there, but I never had issues with them. And there's O2 sensor. Just push that pin downwards and you should be able to disconnect the plug. Just like this. If you have a pin, press it down and then pull it. Now we can take that protective casing for that O2 sensor plug away. Now we need to remove these 4 bolts for the bottom engine mount. All of them 13mm. Engine disconnected. Now there's one really awkward place, the very top of the bell housing. So for some of these bolts you can use tools, electric tools or pneumonic tools, and some of them just hand tools, like pliers and ratchets. Here we can't put inside. If you can put it, but if you're gonna use it, your tool gonna get stuck, and then you have a hard time to get it back out. So just something to keep in mind when you're doing these kind of tight places. And that's another washer bolt out. So this bolt we're gonna leave as the last one, just before removing the gearbox. Now we can move to the other side. I'll disconnect this reverse switch. And then there's one 13mm bolt for the starter motor. Done. The last gearbox bolt on this side. Now we need to take this gear selector cover off. Just there's no bolts, just clips all around it. So on top, that's hard to see. Now we can disconnect the gear selector cables. Use the pliers. You don't need to press anything on these, just pry them off. Like so. Now I spray again WD-40 or maintenance fluid, whatever you have at hand, as these clamps can get sometimes pretty sticky from the dust, and it's hard to pull these levers down. So to disconnect, you have to put this lever down, and then you can pull the cable out of its bracket, like so. Sometimes you get these seized, and then you have use some screwdrivers or anything like that, try to get it off, or pliers for a better grip. The upper one is a little bit difficult as there's not much space to grab it. Lucky for me, it came pretty easy off.
You basically just pull this bottom part, and once it releases, then you can pull it out from its location. I can put this aside. So out of our way. And then secure that bottom bracket. I'm just gonna this bracket.
Now also this bracket,
this one here.
I checked it from down underneath. It was also on the way for the gearbox bell housing, so I'm also using the cable tie just to tighten it, so it was not giving me hard times removing or installing the gearbox back on. Now we need to disconnect the clutch fluid line for the slave cylinder. There's a small pin that we have to pull it upwards prior removing the fluid line itself.
You can't open the door, no. Maybe. Okay, pull it. You go to a restaurant or no?
Just be careful, don't drop it. Nevertheless, I'm gonna be replacing the slave cylinder with the new one, and they come with those clips. So block this pipe, as this pipe is all plastic, so we can't crimp it. So you just put something on front of it just to prevent it leaking on your head while you're working underneath the car. Now we can support the engine. Once that's been done, there is 7 bolts that we need to remove for the gearbox mount. This is what I'm doing. I did not put camera up there, but so you can see here what I'm doing. These bolts I'm removing. Then once those bolts are removed, we can put the bracket away, the engine mount as well away, and it's time to take the gearbox off. Now we remove this last 13mm bell housing bolt. That's all the bolts removed. Gearbox. And you can wiggle it, take the gearbox off. Always recommend ask somebody for help if you have somebody. And that's our replacement gearbox, also supplied by the customer. And here I also have to remove this inner CV joint. So this time I'm using a pry bar and a hammer just to knock it out.
I'm scared I'll steal the other side.
That goes in the bin. And now we can change the slave cylinder or clutch bearing, whatever you prefer calling it. Out with the old and in with the new. It holds by 3 8mm bolts. There's no spec for these bolts, so just tight, not super tight, as end of the day they're 8mm, so easy to snap.
And the new ones only comes with 2 bolts.
Double check if the new clutch goes into the new gearbox. We can proceed removing the old clutch and pressure plate. There's 6 10mm bolts all around it. That's the old one out of the way. We can install the new one. And there's locating pins for these clutches on the flywheel. So what I tend to do, I like to locate all these 6 10mm bolts in. Then align the clutch plate in the center of the flywheel. And the pressure plate spec, torque spec for these 10mm bolts is 29 Newton meters. And they're not specifying which way, but it's also recommended to go in the starways, or always tie the opposite bolt rather than just to go all around it. That's when that being done, we can install now the gearbox in. Again, these gearboxes are not super heavy, but better be safe than sorry, just in case something is not aligned or something gets stuck, or there's so many things can go wrong. So if you have buddy to ask to help you, then definitely use that help. Once the gearbox is locked into its position, we put the one bolt. in, and then check if the gearbox is sitting flush against the cylinder block. If you see a small minor gap like 1 millimeter, then you can put the opposite side the bolt in and it should straighten up. Not gonna be a big deal out of it. That's done. Now we can put the gearbox bracket on. Gearbox mount itself.
Okay, pump it up.
You can,
Yeah, that's it. Leave it there.
too low, you can pump it up and put these two 17 millimeter nuts and then 13 millimeter bolts. These nuts was 18.
All the time.
Now there's different sizes of these bolts, so prior removal, always try to remember from which place which bolt came out. If they're all different sizes, in this occasion the longer one was at the top, the shorter one was at the bottom. So this bolt was the other one, I put the opposite way. And now we can install all the other bolts around the bell housing.
Ciao.
Got this cable tie, the bracket. Starter motor. Luckily for me, the starter motor was not moved and I did not have to align it, I just put the bolts inside. So here I speed up the process how I'm installing these cable ties, but what I later found out was my mistake. I did not compare every single small piece on these replacement gearbox. I just checked it was like same overall look, but the difference was on this that the cover, the back cover, the plastic one, was actually different. So we will come back to these cables in a bit. Now we can plug in the reverse switch, make sure it clicks in so you can hear it. Now the drive shafts can go back inside. You tap it with the rubber hammer, make sure it goes inside. It sits nicely. Okay, the CV joint, and now we can put the ball joint back inside in the knuckle or the hub. Tap it with the rubber hammer ball joint so it gets into its position. Now the other side drive shaft can go inside. Again, pay attention here on this center bearing. Careful not to damage the drive shaft seals as well while you're trying to put these drive shafts in. Tap it with the again rubber hammer to get it in its position. Two 13mm nuts for this middle bearing bracket.
But, yeah.
On the other side, drive shaft can go into the hub assembly. This side was a little bit stiffer, so I had a hard time to locating it because of the rust. So on the ball joint, so it came through but not enough so I can put the ball joint. So the one way, just put this drive shaft nut and screw it all the way in. That's gonna pull the drive shaft all the way through. Once that's been done, the ball joint can go inside. And the spec for the dry shaft nut is 255 Newton meters. I think the gun already did the job, but I will double check it anyway with the torque wrench just to be on the safe side. Looks like the gun even overdid it. Nonetheless, as long as it's no less than 255, you should be good. Ball joint bolt with the nut. Again, 15 on the nut side, 13 on the bolt side. Now the bottom engine mount or dog bone.
Olha.
Locate all these bolts by hand with a couple threads, and then you can use power tools to screw them all the way in. Just something to mention, whenever you use any power tool, afterwards I double check with the ratchet or a spanner to make sure it's tight. Sometimes these tools, they create like a loud noises, like it's torquing the bolt to its maximum, but actually it's just the battery is low, and that's why it's creating loud noises, but actually there's no torque in it, so I can't tie some of the bolts correctly, especially the wheels. That was the O2 sensor. Now the other side, dry shaft. Again, 255 Newton meters. This side went to 274.
Yeah.
Ball joint bolt in the nut. And this bracket for the wiring loom. So prior you putting the upper gearbox bolts, you need to install this bracket. Now we can connect the clutch fluid line back. Right, I'm gonna do that. I will install also this bracket. If you put the line first and then put the bracket, you should be fine to do so. The line can bend a little bit.
Yeah.
Stop and just slide the clutch line to the new slave cylinder or release bearing. Now we can also slide back this wiring loom into its position. Torque this 8mm bolt. These long 13mm bolts, they are for this other bracket. They go to the starter motor. Not forget the surge strap with the bracket, and double check by hand the engine mount bolts. Now there's another sensor that we need to plug at the back, and this is 8mm hex key to open this gearbox plug, so we can fill the fresh gearbox fluid in. This is to show where's the limit, there's the maximum, and the oil grade is 7590. And the capacity for the dry fill is 2.3 liters. If you do same job as I did, where I have a completely dry gearbox from somewhere I don't know where. So as soon as the oil start coming out, that's gonna be your maximum, and tie this to 35 Newton meters of torque. I'm not gonna use a torque wrench on this. I tied it strong enough, so should be good. Just clean up from the spilled oil. And here's the issue with that cover. It looked like it's supposed to go there, and I was trying till I figured it out. It's actually wrong one. For that I needed to disconnect again these gear selector cables. Once that's been done, there's 4 8mm bolts all around this plastic cover. And I replaced it with one from the old gearbox. Fitment is same, also for 8mm bolts. I locate all of them and then tie them. There was no stress on this plastic cover. It looks same, but there is a couple slight curvatures on this cover, so that's why the other cover was not going onto this. And now I can connect again like these gear selector cables. Here I'm struggling, so it doesn't go inside, so I have to like work it, push it.
Now when this bottom cover is swapped, we can put again this
So it locks completely. And this is how easy it's supposed to go. With the clips. That's all. Now we can put the wheels back on.
This is one of the worst parts that Ford has ever designed. I think it comes straight from the hell. I don't know. What do you think, guys, about this?
And the side wheel. Now we need to bleed the clutch system. There's a pin. I'm sorry for this angle, so you can't really see it. But there's a pin that you can twist by fingers.
Okay, pump it.
And once it opens, it pushes the fluid with the air out.
Okay, keep it there.
And then, so
Hold it.
you close it and you ask somebody, if you don't have a special tool, so clutch bleeding tool it called. If you don't have tool, then you just ask somebody to pump the clutch, like to build the pressure inside the system. Then you ask person to hold the pedal down, and while the person is holding the clutch pedal down, you open this pin and is gonna push out all the air with the fluid. And then when the person inside is saying that the pedal feels good as it's supposed to feel, you also try to see if there's no more air coming, just a pure brake fluid. That means the clutch is bled properly. Now this breather hose we can connect back. The battery tray. Together with this airbox tray, or airbox bracket. 5 10mm nuts. You can connect the wiring loom back into the bracket. Battery tray goes on. Remember we have to connect the battery tray to the ECU, or ECU to the battery tray. Put these two forks, T30 screws underneath it. Once that's been done, you can locate the battery tray. Put 3 10mm bolts inside, secure it in place. itself. Upper clamp. Prevent battery from jumping out from its tray. 2 10mm nuts. Now we can connect the positive terminal. While we're connecting negative terminal, we also have to secure this side of this cable strap, whatever you call it. The negative terminal can be connected now as well. Let's not forget this plastic bracket for the vacuum line. Last but not least, the airbox itself. However, we have to locate these 2 pins in those grommets. This bracket that we installed earlier basically pushes in.
I don't know those guys that keep folding.
Also this breather pipe. Last but not least, this air intake pipe. And 7mm to tie these Jubilee clips.
Surprise, motherfucker.
First I thought that maybe I left one of the ramp legs in. Actually I forgot to take this tray off after bleeding the clutch. And on this we have come to an end of another everyday value mechanic video. As always, thank you guys for watching, commenting and subscribing to my channel. It helps really a lot to grow this channel bigger. Thank you and I'll see you on next video.